It's another Dungeon Crawl Classics video. Today we're going to talk about Empire of the East, which of the DCC books is probably my least favorite, but still has some really cool stuff. Let's dive in. Hey everybody, Jordan here, the PH is silent, and this is Dungeon Crawl Classics Empire of the East. For those of you who don't know, there is author, his last name's a little difficult for me, Fred Saberhagen, or Saberhagen. So Fred Saberhagen wrote a series of fantasy sci-fi novels in the 1960s, and this is a setting material to play Dungeon Crawl Classics in the world of those novels. And it's weird because Lankmar was so good and had so much information. And although this book is not bad, it's really thin. There's not a lot of info in here that makes me want to play in the world of Empire of the East, but there's a new patron, there's some new mechanics for demons, and overall, I think it's really good for pulling NPCs because there's a whole list of characters in the back that you could use in a homebrew game. We're going to dive into the PDF now and find out what makes Empire of the East so empire-y and easty. All right, here we are. This is Empire of the East. So I brought up a webpage just to kind of get our thoughts around this. This is a collection of 3+1 novels. It was originally a trilogy, and then they he wrote another one later on, and I think they're all in the 1960s. The Broken Lands, 1968, The Black Mountains, 1971, and Changeling Earth, 1973. So that is the trilogy that I was talking about. And then Ardna's Sword is the 2006 kind of conclusion, which Empire of the East for Dungeon Crawl Classics really says we don't count Ardna's Sword in the creation of Empire of the East because Arden's Sword takes place so far past the setting that is Changeling Earth. That it is probably a very good story as a capstone to the series, but not necessarily something they want to try and incorporate into this adventure setting. Now, the world of Empire of the East, the Changeling Earth, I think is what it's called, they have science and technology and magic and fantasy, and it's all kind of interwoven, and it feels like a very good reflection of the 1960s and how sci-fi and fantasy were very connected. But earlier it was not uncommon to be like, I'm a wizard and I'm going to fly to the moon and battle a dinosaur and things like that. Everything was just kind of interchangeable like that. And it was always a futuristic Earth. And I shouldn't say always, but I'm thinking of Jack Vance and this is also a very futuristic Earth. So what separates it? Well, let's go look at the PDF. What is Empire of the East? Well, we've got these cool flames up here. We've got some mechanical looking knights and horses and people with soldier helmets. It's not, I don't want to say it's complicated, but we've got demons here and rocket ships and nuclear explosions. There's a lot going on in this world. The setting, this whole world is really interesting. I like the idea of it. I don't necessarily, I don't think I would let my characters or let my players know this secret if I was to come up with something like this, but this is Earth, but it's so far in the future. What happened is the East and the West, or the two major powers of the world, created these artificial intelligences, and it's called Ardna. And you can see it here. It says Automatic Restoration Director, National Executive Headquarters. Now, this Ardna creation was there to thwart nuclear weapons. So if a nuclear weapon came over and was going to land on their soil or detonate, it would create a field that would cause all the radioactive material to become inert. And so you would just have a chunk of rock or lead fall to the ground. And this was their defense against the enemy, which is the Empire of the East, because I'm pretty sure they are the West. Unbeknownst to the people of the West, the East had created a similar artificial intelligence. And so what caused magic and everything to arise into our world is that both sides launched their missiles at the same time. Both of these defense fields activated at the same time, made the technology inert, but as the fields hit each other, a new explosion enwrapped the whole world that changed physics and how physics works throughout the universe, really. So after that, technology doesn't really work anymore, but we can learn spells and we can cast magic and we can do other things like that. So there's this idea that we know of the old ways, but at the same time, we are forced to learn how the world operates at this exact same time. Now, when those fields collided, this is something I thought was really interesting. Every act of violence that was happening in the world at that time, so like murder or theft or things like that, just all the bad stuff that people do to each other, those physical acts of violence or just bad things became demons. And so that's where the demons of this world come from, is my hatred and my of assaulting somebody, or just the fact that the two sides are warring and they don't like each other. All of those feelings turned into a physical demon that now roams the world. And so I love that, because now they have a reason for being, and they have a reason for being the most evil possible, and it comes from humans. And I thought that was really cool. So you're playing in this, and the whole game is kind of, well, I think the novels, I haven't read the novels, but the whole novels and everything is kind of a race. The East wants to find Ardna and destroy it. The West wants to find Ardna and repair it and hopefully protect themselves. So it's this constant fighting between people. And we'll look a little bit later, but there's a lot of NPCs that you can use in the back of this book that are showcase all the different characters throughout the series. So the geography of all of this really is the United States of America, but it's a war-torn, kind of shattered America, because it's so far in the future, and it's also after the world has been reshaped by these two fields that interact. No clerics, no elves, no dwarves, nothing like that. This is much like Lankmar. You can be a wizard, a thief, or a warrior, and they really encourage you to play that way, as opposed to adding clerics and stuff, saying that you might break this game if you do. This is also interesting. They say, why not Mutant Crawl Classics? Because you would think, like, radioactive dystopian whatever, that I should base my Empire of the East game using Mutant Crawl Classics rather than this supplement. And they just simply say that Mutant Crawl Classics was a supplement to Dungeon Crawl Classics, and they don't want to make a supplement for a supplement. So because of that, this is its own thing. You only need the core rulebook and this to technically play, but they would encourage you to use Mutant Crawl Classic stuff if you want to, because it makes a lot of sense, especially the technology rules. Magic plays a big role in this setting, obviously. There's all kinds of crazy spells, and how spells work a little differently. Something that is interesting is that in the Changeling Earth world, metal of some kind or drawn weapons can affect your magic. It says here that it is well known that the arcane art of spellcasting works best in the complete absence of drawn metal weaponry. And this is just a arcane thing that they have discovered and know all about. So if you're a wizard, you don't want to be around any of that. You don't want to have a dagger in your hand that you're casting spells at the same time. So you have a cumulative -2 to your spell check for every individual present within you within a 100-foot range that has a drawn metal melee weapon. So that being said, you have all of these spells. Why would I want to play a wizard if I can't actually use most of them when I most need to, it's because of psychic combat. So in this setting, wizards are supposed to kind of find the other wizard and engage in a psychic combat with them to keep them occupied while the melee folks and the ranged archers and stuff go out and kind of take care of some other stuff. So there's a new set of rules that kind of go on how counterspell works, but this is applying psychic damage and concentration checks and stuff between two people that are like locked in psychic combat. It's a little odd, and I feel like it's very setting specific, so maybe that's why it feels out of place to me when I read this. I haven't tried it, so I'm not really sure, but it could be cool, and maybe it is one of those things where you understand your role as you are playing this, so you know exactly what you need to do in a combat, as opposed to floundering with your like -8, -12 to your spell check, which just means that you can't really cast any magic. Replacing corruption in this setting is spell enervation, where you don't mutate and all this stuff, but you can like hurt yourself, or you can just pass out from exhaustion. So a little different, not as terrible to roll on this spell enervation table as opposed to a corruption table. There are some new spells here and some altered spells. So definitely you can go here. Here's the spells for the Changeling Earth. They took out a lot of other stuff, and they actually gave some spells that are from the cleric side to the wizard side for this setting specifically. So that's kind of cool. Some of the new spells that I actually really like are the Summon Demon and Summon Djinn, and how they scale and the usefulness of that. Something we don't have in regular Dungeon Crawl Classics. So Ardna is the good artificial intelligence that is protecting the West. The artificial intelligence of the East, we didn't really talk about what that was, mostly because from the perspective of the heroes and the reader of the novels and stuff, we don't really know what that side was doing. And so it's left mysterious. However, for this supplement, and I guess going forward, the AI that was the opposite end on the East, the other artificial intelligence, that becomes known as Orcus. So you have Ardna and Orcus, and these are the two like mega patron powers within Empire of the East. Now, having said that, the book specifically says you don't really want to use Ardna as a patron, even though we've included it as a patron, which just feels really weird. And then there's not a patron for Orcus, just for Ardna. So I don't know. I'm really confused about this. But if you wanted to include patrons, it kind of says you don't have to, but there is an Ardna patron. And I also feel like you could use the artificial intelligence patrons from Mutant Crawl Classics really easily, and they would also fit in here. And Orcus, like there's a whole backstory on Orcus, but we don't have a patron for him, and I feel really bummed about that. Maybe there's an equivalent one you could use in another one, but they went to all the attention to say, you don't need patrons, but we're going to give you the Ardna patron, and then you don't need patrons, and we're just not going to give you Orcus, even though we have a whole like section on him here. So I was kind of sad about that. This is probably one of the better chapters for Dungeon Masters, Personalities of the Changeling Earth. So these are what I was talking about, where we have the different people or NPCs that you can encounter. I don't think I'll ever run an Empire of the East game, but I really like these NPCs, or I like these characters, and I want to use them as NPCs. And so if you're running a post-apocalyptic kind of game, this is definitely something to pull from. And I thought that this was really cool. Really fun art, as always, and just really good. There's stat blocks for a lot of these guys and who they are. Here's John. He is the Emperor of the East. And the Nameless One. Like, really cool stuff. Psalm the Dead. And just who these people are and how they fit into the world. But I feel like you could use them in a lot of different worlds and just kind of reapply them to yours. So this setting, or this section, I really, really enjoyed. This is a great piece of art because you have the explosion of maybe Orcus or something here. Just the fact that a mushroom cloud could be an evil spell, and then you have these like blocks of pixelated stuff in the top corner. I love this, and I really feel like that encapsulates this. You have an army, but you also nuclear explosions are magic in a way, and it's just kind of cool. And then we have a level 0 or level 1 adventure that is fine, and it's just an adventure. We have another one, the Demon Key, so you could run these to get a feel for what you're doing, and random artifacts. Here is a map of the world. So this is basically the United States. We have the Broken Lands, the desert, and the Empire of the East, and this is the whole, the Rocky Mountains here. This is a really cool map. It's fun. You can see I've been talking for a while. The sun is now reached all the way over there. I do enjoy this book, and I'm happy that I backed it, and I'm happy that I have it. I haven't used it, and I'm not so sure I will get a chance to. I've always wanted to run a Mad Max style Dungeon Crawl Classics game, specifically using the Umerica rules, but I don't know if I would technically apply this to that. Maybe I would. I'm not really sure, because Umerica would be like puns and silly, and this one feels a little more set in the real. The way I would really enjoy this, though, is if I presented it as a completely weird fantasy setting, and then over the course of the adventure, my players could come to understand that their characters are actually on a future Earth. And that aha moment might be a lot of fun to play, or like it would be fun to experience through them, but I don't think I would be, I don't think that's enough motivation for me to run an entire Empire of the East game. Will I steal from this? Most likely. I like the idea of the psychic combat a little bit. I might change it to like magic combat to help the wizard have something to do while he's engaged in battle. Like if a wizard is out of spell slots, they can do this like arcane link and try to, I don't know, hurt the enemy wizard in some way. But you can only use that against other magic users, and I kind of like that idea. We'll see. I also find it interesting that this Enlankmar doesn't have clerics, and I know that's from like the setting, but clerics really are one of the most powerful classes in Dungeon Crawl Classics. And so it's funny that they're just conveniently removed from this. So we'll see. Are you going to pick up Empire of the East? It's available on DriveThruRPG as a PDF. It's available on Goodman Games website. There are links down below. Let me know if you are running Empire of the East. Let me know if you are really enjoying the supplement, and how are you using it? That's what I would be really curious about. So if anybody else is watching and they want to know some ideas of how people are utilizing this book, check it out down below. I'm working on some more videos for this channel. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe now. And thank you so much for people who are already subscribed. I will see you guys all in the next video.